sets. Not always, again, not always, but in this case, you can partition the vertex set into minimal dominating sets, but not gamma sets. You can be sure in this case. Why? The domination number is 3 and there are 10 vertices in the graph. So you can't partition the vertex set into gamma sets, because a gamma set will always have cardinality 3 and 10 is not divisible by 3. So it is not always true that the vertex set of a graph into gamma sets. No, just to make sure that all of you are awake, it is afternoon. So just to make sure that all of you are awake, I am giving you a question. Find the domination number of a path on 9 vertices. So here you have a path. Find the domination number. You can just give the answer. No need to identify the dominating set. You can just write the domination number in the chat box. I'm not getting any responses. For path of length 9, here I have given the picture of path also. If you are not familiar with that, I just want to make sure that you know what a path is. What will be the domination number? That is the question. Still not getting any responses. Are you all there, or is it that you haven't understood the concept of domination number? Just try and come up with some responses. Is there any difficulty in accessing the chat box? I know you can't unmute and speak. The host has muted all the participants and you can't unmute yourself. But is there any difficulty in using the chat box? Yeah, one of the participants has come up with the answer 4. It may be true, may be wrong. Yeah, and the response I received as 3, again 4, 3, 4. So there is a conflict between 3 and 4. So let us check. I'm happy that all of you are there. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, that's it. It's not that I want you to find the domination number of path exactly, but I just wanted to make sure that all of you are listening to me. Okay, so happy that you have all responded. Let us check what will be the domination number of this graph. Some of you have responded with 4. So is there any dominating set of cardinality 4? Okay, I choose this vertex, this vertex, this vertex, and this one. So I have chosen 4 vertices, 1, 3, 5, and 7. And that is definitely a dominating set. 0 is adjacent to 1, 2 is adjacent to both 1 and 3. 4, there are 2 neighbors, 3 and 5, 6, 5 and 7, and 8 is adjacent to 7. So this is definitely a dominating set. Is that minimal? Yes, it is again minimal. If you remove one of these vertices, then that particular vertex, which is removed from the dominating set, is not dominated by any other vertex. So definitely this is minimal also. But the thing is that this is not minimum. Why? I'll make another choice. Okay, let us again choose 7. But I'm not choosing 5. I go for 4 and then 1. Okay, please check it. It is a dominating set, right? 0 and 2 are adjacent to 1 and hence are dominated by 1. 3 and 5 are adjacent to 4 and are dominated by 4. 6 and 8 are adjacent to 7 and hence are dominated by 7. So this is a minimal dominating set of cardinality 3. So domination number is not 4, maybe it is 3. To prove that it is 3, one more step is required. What is that? You have to prove that there does not exist any dominating set of cardinality less than 3. That is of cardinality 2 or 1. Okay. How many vertices can a vertex dominate maximum in the case of a path? In the case of a path, the degree of a vertex is at most 2. For pendant vertices, it is 1, and for all other vertices, it is 2. So a vertex can dominate at most 3 vertices itself and 2 of its neighbors. So with 2 vertices, how many vertices can I dominate? I can dominate maximum 6 vertices. And there are 9 vertices in this graph, and hence we can be sure that there is no dominating set of cardinality 2. So there is no dominating set of cardinality 2 or lesser. The same arguments holds in the case of one vertex. It can dominate only up to a maximum of 3 vertices. So there is no dominating set of cardinality either 1 or 2. But there is a dominating set of cardinality 3. And this confirms that the domination number of path on 9 vertices is 3. I assume that now the concept of domination is clear to you. Okay. Or just let me clear those annotations. Okay. This is for all those chess lovers. This just shows that how domination can be applied in chess. Just for fun. Here I have placed 5 queens in the chessboard so that every column is attacked by at least 1 queen. You choose any column. Say, if you choose this white column, then this is attacked by this queen. So you are not safe there. Similarly, you can choose any box of your interest and see that that is attacked by at least 1 queen. So this is known as queen domination problem. Similar things can be done with say bishop, say with rook, or whichever coin you want. You can ask similar questions and just name it as say bishop domination problem. Such problems exist in graph theory, and you need not restrict yourself to the conventional chessboard, to 8 by 8 board. You need not restrict yourself to that. You can look for say 9 by 9 chessboard, or maybe if you are not interested in big cases, 4 by 4 chessboard. But these are not research problems, that are all already known concepts, but that will give you an idea on how to find a dominating set given an arbitrary graph. Is this related to graph? Of course, yes. The vertex set will be corresponding to each box. You will have 1 vertex, and 2 vertices will be made adjacent if the coin under consideration, here it is queen, if the queen can move from that box to another box, then the corresponding vertices are made adjacent. Okay. Now, what you have to find is a dominating set in this board. And if you choose a minimum dominating set, then this problem can be done with minimum number of queens. That's it. That's how it is related. Here you have another example. This graph is called a 5 by 5 grid. In fact, it is Cartesian product of P5 with P5 itself. Cartesian product I will explain in detail after some time. That is again required at some point. But I mentioned that, that's all. And these blue vertices gives a dominating set. Check with any red vertex, it is adjacent to at least 1 blue vertex. So that gives me a dominating set, and it is not difficult to check that it is minimal. You remove any of the blue vertex or recolor any of the blue vertex with red, the resultant set won't be a dominating set. So it is easy to check the minimality, but the minimum path in the case of grids is a bit difficult. In this case, it has already been proved that this is the minimum case, but it's not that easy. It's not that trivial. It requires some work to prove that this is a minimum possible choice. And of course, the minimum possible choice is not unique. You can have more than 1 dominating sets of cardinality equal to that of the domination number. Now let us move on to some of the bounds of domination number. First, I will just show you some of the upper bounds. The definition says that you take any vertex, it must be either present in S or must be adjacent to at least one vertex in S. So let us take all vertices, the whole vertex set. Definitely it will be a dominating set, right? So n, the number of vertices, serves as a trivial upper bound for domination number. But will that be satisfied by any graph? Of course, yes. You take n k1s, that is n isolated vertices. To dominate that graph, you need all n vertices because there is no adjacency, there is no relation between any two vertices. So to dominate, you will have to take the entire graph. Unfortunately, that is the only case where the domination number is n. Of course, we can have better upper bounds in the case of better graphs. So if you are considering a connected graph, then an upper bound of domination number is upper integer value of n by 2. The whole graph is connected. So you take any vertex of your choice that will dominate at least one more vertex. The graph is connected. So every vertex is connected to at least one more vertex. So you take any vertex of your choice, that vertex and at least one more vertex is dominated. So remove those two. Now we have n minus 2 vertices. Repeat the same process. You choose one vertex of your choice that will dominate at least one more vertex. Again, remove those two, repeat the same procedure, and you will get a dominating set of cardinality, upper integer value of n by 2. If it is odd, one vertex will remain. That is why we are going for upper integer value of n by 2. So that is a much better upper bound of domination number, and there are infinitely many graphs which attains this upper bound. Another choice of upper bound is the independence number. So what is the independence number? A subset of the vertex set V is called independent if no two of its vertices are adjacent to each other. So that is an independent set. And independence number is the maximum possible cardinality of an independent set. Okay. So you take an independent set. This independent set is maximum. Okay, this is a maximal independent set. So minimum possible cardinality of a maximal independent set. That is what independence number is. Anyway, that independent set is maximal. Maximality is applied there, not to increase cardinality, but to ensure that no further vertices can be added to that independent set. So that is our status now. We have chosen a maximal independent set, which means you take any vertex outside this independent set that will be adjacent to at least one vertex in this independent set. If you add that vertex, the independency is lost, which means that vertex is adjacent to at least one vertex in this independent set. That is exactly what we need in the case of domination number, right? So an independent, maximal independent set gives you a dominating set. So independence number serves as a much better upper bound for domination number. But in some cases, these two parameters are equal. Upper integer value of n by 2 and independence number coincides. Okay. What about lower bounds? These three were upper bounds of domination number. There are plenty of lower bounds for domination number. Here I have listed some of them. I don't want to explain all of them, but just I will explain the first one. If d is the diameter of the graph, then d plus 1 by 3 is a lower bound for domination number. Let us see why it is so. The diameter is d means there exists a diametral path, that is a path of length d, which do not admit any shortcut. Distance between two vertices is d. The diameter of a graph is d means there exists a pair of vertices such that the distance between them is d. So find that diametral path, that is the path of length d. How many vertices will be there? There will be d plus 1 vertices. And using the same argument that we applied for path on 9 vertices, we can say that the domination number of this diametral path of length d which contains d plus 1 vertices is at least d plus 1 by 3. Since there are no shortcodes, we can be sure that to dominate the entire graph, this diametral path must be dominated by at least d plus 1 by 3 vertices. There can be more. The diametral path, for the diametral path itself, we need d plus 1 by 3 vertices. There are many more, there can be many more vertices in the graph. To dominate that, we may require plenty of more and more vertices. That is not a problem, but definitely you need d plus 1 by 3 vertices. So that serves as a lower bound of the domination number. Similarly, you can prove that 2r by 3, where r is the radius of a graph, is a lower bound. Then for trees, there is a special lower bound n minus l plus 2 by 3, where l is the number of leaves. Then x plus 2 by 3, where x is the number of cut vertices in a graph. G by 3, where G is the girth. Girth is the length of the maximal cycle, minimal cycle, I mean. G by 3 also serves as a lower bound of domination number. Okay, so that's all about the bounds of domination number. Now let us move on to the application of domination number. When you think about application of graph theory, in fact, domination dominates that, I must say. Okay, at almost every places where graph theory is applied, domination also plays a role. In some way or other, we can connect domination number to that application. Some of the applications of domination number are in security analysis, communication networks, coding theory, biological networks, operation research, social network analysis, and say many more. How domination number is applied at these points? Let us check that. First is security system. The definition of domination itself invokes the concept of security system. The definition itself contains the concept of security system. To monitor a system, we need to place security officers. To reduce the monetary side, we need to do that with minimum number of security officers. This is exactly finding a minimum dominating set. So placing security officers in such a way that all locations are monitored is just same as finding minimum dominating set of that particular structure. Then comes communication networks. Again, you need to communicate to certain nodes. For that, you need to have some communicating centers. Say in the case of radio, we need radio stations. So locating radio stations or say mobile towers in such a way that with minimum number of radio stations or with minimum number of mobile towers, you can communicate, you can circulate the broadcast to all places where it is required. It is equivalent to finding a minimum dominating set. That is how domination number is applied to communication theory. Then comes coding theory. In error correcting codes, to find an error correcting code, in fact, you are finding a dominating set with some additional required properties. It's not exactly finding a dominating set, but what you need is a dominating set with certain peculiar properties. Then comes biological networks. Biology is one of the subjects which I don't like at all. But since there is application of graph theory, application of domination theory in biology also, I have just read some papers which connects biology and graph theory, and from that I understood that identifying secondary RNA is equivalent to finding a dominating set. So graph theory, domination numbers, domination theory is applied in biological networks also. Then comes operations research, minimization problems like say minimum transportation cost, providing equitable services, such things. Again, we are finding a minimal dominating set. So there also domination can be applied. Then comes social network analysis. You need to disseminate a particular news among all occupants or among a universal set. So with minimum possible transmissions, you have to get the information to all those who are in the universal set. That is equivalent to finding a kind of a domination number. It's not exactly the domination number. Of course, domination number can also be applied in this case. You find a dominating set in that network and give the information to all of them. And you can be sure that in one step, the information will be transmitted to all others. In some cases, it may be that you don't want to transmit the information in one step. In 5 steps, can you transmit the information to all? Such case, we are finding a kind of distance domination number. In distance domination, say in 2 distance domination, a vertex can dominate its neighbors and its neighbors. That is, it can dominate all vertices which are at a distance less than or equal to 2 from the original vertex. So, in social network analysis, in that way, domination number is applied. So I told that variations of domination number. What is that? So let us have a look at some of the variations of domination number. There are at least 1,000 variations of domination numbers. I have not listed all. I have just handpicked some of them, which were initially, the study were initiated in the case of variation of domination numbers. One of them is total domination number. In case of total domination number, a vertex cannot dominate itself. The definition of domination number says that every vertex is either present in S or is adjacent to at least one vertex in S. When we move on to total domination, the first condition is dropped. That is, either present in S. That condition is dropped. Every vertex must be adjacent to at least one vertex in S. That is total domination number. Which is equivalent to saying that the open neighborhood of the set S is the entire vertex set V. In the case of domination number, it was closed neighborhood, and now we have open neighborhood. Another concept is paired domination number. S is a paired dominating set if it is a dominating set and it contains a perfect matching. So we are looking for a dominating set which contains a perfect matching and try to minimize that. That gives me paired domination number. Then comes connected domination number. In connected domination number, the set S must be dominating and the induced subgraph, the subgraph induced by the vertex set S must be connected. That gives me connected domination number. Then comes independent domination number, just the opposite that of connected domination number. You need a dominating set and there should not be any adjacency between any two vertices of the dominating set. That gives me independent domination number. Why there are so many variations of domination? Most of the variations are a fruit of a paper published in 1990 by Basco and Tuza. The title is Dominating Cliques in P5 Free Graphs, which is published in Periodica Mathematica Hungarica. In that paper, the authors posed an open problem. They told that let P be a property of the vertex set in graphs. Characterize all graphs having a dominating set satisfying property P. It is not true that you give me a property P, I can always find a dominating set given any graph G. Maybe in some graphs, there is no dominating set which satisfies the property suggested by you. It is possible. Say, if I am given a disconnected graph and I am supposed to find a connected dominating set, it is not going to be possible. The graph itself is disconnected. Then how can I find a dominating set which is connected? So it is not possible. So it is not always true that you give any property P and any graph G, I can always find a graph, always find a dominating set of that graph which satisfies property P. So the question was to characterize graphs which admits dominating sets which satisfies property P. So this motivated many authors to define new domination parameters by varying the property P. In the above in the case of above three parameters, what was the property? In the case of connected domination number, the property was S is connected. In the case of paired domination number, the property was subgraph induced by S is S contains a perfect matching like that. Okay. Do they have any real life application? That is the next question. I have given 4 domination parameters. Are they purely theoretical or do they have any application? What about total domination number? In total domination number, a vertex cannot dominate itself. That is the difference, right? So you have placed the security officers in such a way that every location is monitored. Assume that some attackers just shoot a security officer and he is dead. What happens? If his location is not monitored by another security officer, then this casualty will not be reported and the system becomes unstable. Okay, that is where we want total domination number. A vertex cannot dominate itself. Every security officer must be monitored by some other security officer to ensure his security. So that is where total domination number is applied. Another thing is paired domination number. Again, let us consider the case of security itself. In military operations, you might have heard about buddy pair. For those Mohanlal fans, you can just think about the film Kargil. There Jiva plays the role of buddy pair of Mohanlal. That's just for the sake of all Mohanlal fans. And there are many films in which the buddy pair concept in military operations are shown. What is that? You have an operation in which a set of military officers are attacking a particular region. They make it sure that while they are proceeding further, every corner is observed and they are proceeding. So every point is observed, which means domination, and the security of each military officer is ensured by one of his buddy pairs. Okay, so there is a kind of perfect matching between the military officers. So in fact, there we are having paired domination number. Then comes connected domination number. Again, the military force is moving. If something happens, something which needs an alert happens, you need to alert all your fellow militants, right? So that you need a connected dominating set. You should not move far away in such a way that communications cannot be made to each other. Or there must be some mechanism of communication between all the militants. So there comes connected domination number. Another thing is independent domination number, just the reverse case. At some point, it may be that no communication between the military officers is entertained. Everything is controlled by one superior officer and only he will be able to communicate with the militants. No communication between the military officers. There comes independent domination number. So all these parameters are having applications. The saddest thing is that nowadays so many new domination parameters are defined which actually do not have any application. They were defined just for the sake of defining a new parameter or just for the sake of getting a PhD degree. So please don't do that. That reduces the quality of your work. Definitely, you can do something if you have a definite motivation. It is not necessary that always you find the application of a particular thing, but you must have some motivation other than getting a PhD degree, of course. You must have some motivation when you extend a concept to a new thing by just manipulating some of the properties. You can do that manipulation, but make sure that when you do such a change, there is a definite motivation behind that. That is always necessary for good quality of research work. So another variation of domination number is Raman domination. In fact, this parameter was motivated by World War. During World War II, Emperor Constantine had to decide where to station his four-field army units to protect 8 regions. His strategy was to place army units so that every region was either secured by one of its army units or was securable by a neighbor with 2 army units. That is, if a riot happens at one region, from a neighboring region, one army unit can be sent to this particular region. Still, one unit remains in the original region. So that is the concept. Okay. So every region is monitored by 2 army units. The 2 army units, if a riot breaks out, one army unit moves to this point. That was his concept. And this concept was mathematically formulated by Ian Stewart in 1999 in his paper Strategy of Emperor Constantine for Defending the Roman Empire. This was published in Science America in 1999. Later, in 2004, Cochrane and his team of 4 authors introduced the concept of Roman domination based on the Strategy of Roman Emperor, which was published by Ian Stewart in 1999. So let us see, what is the definition of Roman domination number? So a Roman dominating function of a graph G is a function from the vertex set to the set 0, 1, 2, such that every vertex V for which f of v equal to 0 has a neighbor u with f of u equal to 2. This is exactly what Roman Empire did, right? Every region, either there is an army unit, which means f of v equal to 1 or 2. There is 1 or 2 army units there. Okay. So either f of v equal to 1 or 1 or 2, or if it is 0, what should happen? It must have a neighbor where there are 2 army units from which one unit can be sent to this place where there is no unit. That is here mathematically formulated as, if f of v equal to 0, then it has a neighbor u with f of u equal to 2. The weight of a Roman dominating function is the sum of values assigned to all vertices, and the Roman domination number is the minimum weight of all possible Roman dominating functions. Okay. So here you have an example. If this is my graph, I place 2 army units here and 1 army unit here. All other places there are no army units. It's all 0, but you can see that all these 0 vertices are made adjacent to at least one vertex where the value is 2. So the Roman domination number of this particular graph is 3. It's not enough that you find a Roman dominating function and say that the Roman domination number is equal to the sum of weights. You need to prove minimality, as in the case of domination number. Here to prove the minimality is easy. One vertex can dominate at most 5 vertices. So you need at least 2 vertices to dominate the entire graph. And here you need to give the value 2. Then only it can dominate the neighboring vertices. And this vertex can dominate itself by giving the value 1. So the Roman domination number is 3. Now, you take a Roman dominating set. You consider all vertices which have non-zero values. This gives you a dominating set. Every vertex which is labeled 0 is adjacent to a vertex which is labeled 1. So I am taking all vertices which are having non-zero values, right? So all vertices which are labeled 2 I have chosen. And all vertices which are labeled 1 also I have chosen. Vertices which are labeled 0 are adjacent to the vertices which are labeled 2. So non-zero vertices in a Roman dominating function gives me a dominating set. So the domination number is a lower bound for Roman domination number. Again, you give me a dominating set. Every vertex is adjacent to at least one vertex in this dominating set, right? So give value 2 to all those vertices which are present in that dominating set, which satisfies the condition, right? All other vertices are adjacent to at least one vertex which is of value 2. So 2 into gamma of G gives me an upper bound of Roman domination number. The graphs which attain lower bound are the trivial graphs in this case. Trivial graphs means nk1, n isolated vertices. Only in that case, the lower bound gamma of g equal to gamma r of g is attained. And the graphs which attain the upper bound, that is gamma r of g equal to 2 into gamma of g, that bound is attained, are named as Roman graphs. The characterization problem of Roman graphs is an open problem for researchers who are interested in Roman domination theory. Now, domination number has many variations. Similar to that, Roman domination number is also having many variations. These are some of them: weak Roman domination, total Roman domination, independent Roman domination, and double Roman domination. What is that? Weak Roman domination was introduced to reduce the cost but still keep protection. That is the concept of weak Roman domination. Reduce the cost means reduce the number of army units and still keep the protection. That is the concept of weak Roman domination. Total Roman domination means a army unit cannot protect the region where it is standing. Okay, if a bomb is dropped there and the entire army unit is destroyed, what will happen? So total domination merged with Roman domination gives total Roman domination. Again, independent domination merged with Roman domination gives independent Roman domination. The fourth one is double Roman domination. As you all know, the strategy of Roman Empire failed, right? He was not victorious in World War, so his strategy failed. So actually, we need, it's not enough. That protection strategy is not enough. We need a much stronger strategy, but without affecting the cost factor must. The cost must not increase heavily, but the protection level must be doubled. That gave rise to the concept of double Roman domination. Stronger and more flexible protection without much additional cost. Let us have a quick scan through the definition of these concepts. The first one is weak Roman domination. A weak Roman dominating function, WRDF in short. There, the thing is that it's again a function from vertex set of V to 0, 1, 2, such that each vertex u for which f of u equal to 0 is adjacent to a vertex with f of v greater than 0. For Roman domination, it was 2, right? Every vertex which is labeled 0 must be adjacent to a vertex which is labeled 2 was the condition for Roman domination. For weak Roman domination, it is reduced to f of v greater than 0. F of v greater than 0 means the weight of v is either 1 or 2. Even if there is only one unit, that unit can move to this place to protect, right? But that should not disturb the entire structure. For that, there is one additional condition. The condition says that the new function f dash of v defined from vertex set of v to 0, 1, 2 in such a way that vertex u is now assigned the value 1 and vertex v is now assigned the value f of v minus 1. That is, if it was 2, it will be reduced to 1. If it was 1, it will be reduced to 0. That is, we are just shifting one unit from v to u and observing the new situation. And make sure that there are no undefended vertices. If that condition is satisfied, then the function is called a weak Roman dominating function. And the minimum possible cardinality of a weak Roman dominating function is called the weak Roman domination number of G, denoted by gamma R of G. Gamma small r. For Roman domination, it is gamma suffix capital R. For weak Roman domination, it is gamma suffix small r. So that was the concept of weak Roman domination. Now move on to total Roman domination number. Again, it is a function from vertex set of v to 0, 1, 2 such that every vertex v for which f of v equal to 0 has a neighbor u with f of u equal to 2, and there exists no isolated vertex in the graph induced by vertices having non-zero weights. That is, In the case of vertices which are labeled 0, the same thing that of Roman domination works there. Every vertex which is labeled 0 must be adjacent to a vertex having label 2. That is same as the condition for Roman domination number. Here the additional restriction is that a vertex which is labeled 1 should not be isolated. That is, it is adjacent to some other vertex which is labeled either 1 or 2. Again, a vertex which is labeled 2 cannot stand alone, cannot be isolated. It must be adjacent to another vertex which is labeled either 1 or 2. So that is the concept of total Raman dominating function. And the total Raman domination number of a graph G is the minimum possible weight of a total Raman dominating function. It is denoted by gamma TR of G. Next one was independent Raman domination number. Again, it is a function defined from vertex set of V to 0, 1, 2 such that every vertex V for which f of V equal to 0 has a neighbor U with f of U equal to 2, and vertices having non-zero weight forms an independent set. The concept of independent set is introduced. Vertices having non-zero weight should not have any adjacency between them. In that way, we have to assign the weight. And independent Raman domination number is the minimum possible weight of an independent Raman dominating function. That is denoted by gamma IR of G. Next one is double Raman domination number. Here, there is a difference in defining the function itself. In all the three previous cases, the function was from vertex set of V to the set 0, 1, 2. Here, the range set is 0, 1, 2, 3. There are 4 points in the range set. And there is a difference in the condition applied also. Every vertex which is labeled 0 is either adjacent to 2 vertices which are labeled 2 or a vertex which is labeled 3. That is, even when one army unit moves, still there is a Raman dominating structure. Okay. And every vertex which is labeled 1 is adjacent to a vertex of label greater than or equal to 2. That is a vertex of label either 2 or 3. After one shifting, the resultant set is still Raman dominating. Okay. So that doubles the protection. That doubles the protection strategy of the Raman emperor. So that is double Raman dominating function. And the weight of a DRDF is the sum of weights assigned to all vertices, and double Raman domination number denoted by gamma dr of G is the minimum weight of a DRDF on G. Let us take the same example. I just replaced 3 by 2 and 1 with, sorry, I just replaced 2 by 3 and 1 with 2. That gives me a double Raman dominating set. This is always true. Take a Raman dominating set, reassign all vertices which are labeled 2 with 3, and reassign all vertices which are labeled 1 with 2. That gives you a double Raman dominating set. But that need not be true always. We may have minimal assignments without starting from a Raman dominating set. Again, all vertices with label greater than or equal to 2 gives me a dominating set. Why? All vertices which are labeled 0 are either adjacent to a vertex which is 2 vertices which are labeled 2 or one vertex which is labeled 3. So vertices labeled 0 are taken care of by vertices of label 2 or 3. Also, vertices which are labeled 1 are taken care of by vertices which are labeled 2 or 3. Okay. So we need at least 2 into gamma of G vertices, 2 into gamma of G cardinal weight to double Raman dominate a graph. So 2 into gamma of G gives me a lower bound of double Raman domination number. Similar to that of Raman domination, you take any dominating set, assign weight 3 to all the vertices which are present in that dominating set. That gives me a double Raman dominating function. and that gives me the upper bound 3 gamma of G. So in this example, these two vertices gives me a dominating set, right? So if I mark 3 here and 3 here, that is obviously a double Raman dominating function. As evident from the example, you can see that that is not the minimal case. But there are examples in which that is the minimal case. That is, you have to assign the value 3 to all vertices in the gamma set. Then only you will get a double Raman dominating set. Okay. So it is bounded below by 2 gamma of G and bounded above by 3 gamma of G. The graphs which attain the lower bound, that is 2 gamma of G equal to gamma dr of G, is attained obviously by the trivial graph and by complete bipartite graphs K2Q. That is complete bipartite graphs in which one partition contains only 2 vertices. So these two are the only category which attains the lower bound. And the graphs which attain the upper bound, that is 3 gamma of G equal to gamma dr of G, are called double Raman graphs. The characterization of double Raman graphs is an open problem. Obviously, we have infinitely many graphs for which this upper bound is attained. And there are some classes of graphs. Some classes of graphs are identified which satisfies this upper bound. But the general characterization problem is still open. That is, characterize all double Raman graphs. That is an open problem. Now, I have listed 4 variations of Raman domination number. These are not the only variations. There are again many other variations of Raman domination, namely Italian domination, perfect Raman domination, perfect Italian domination, and co-Raman domination. These are all again variations of Raman domination. Let us see what they are. Italian domination means in Raman domination, every vertex which is having value 0 must be adjacent to a vertex having value 2, right? Why you are particular that it must be adjacent to a vertex which is having value 2? Let it be 2 vertices having value 1 each, similar to the condition which we have framed for double Raman domination. So every vertex which is having value 0 is either adjacent to 2 vertices having value 1 or 1 vertex having value 2. So the condition is a bit relaxed. That gives me Italian domination number. And every Raman dominating function is an Italian dominating function, and hence the Italian domination number is always less than or equal to the Raman domination number. So Italian domination number is a lower bound of Raman domination number, or in other words, Raman domination number is an upper bound for Italian domination number. And till now, no name is given to graphs which attains equality. Maybe if you want, you can call them Italian Raman graphs. The graphs which attain the equality, Italian domination number equal to Raman domination number. And there are infinitely many graphs which satisfies that equality, and equivalently, infinitely many graphs which satisfies strict inequality. That is, Italian domination number is strictly less than Raman domination number. Another thing is perfect Raman domination number. In case of Raman domination number, what we insisted is that every vertex which is having value 0 is adjacent to a vertex having value 2, right? In the case of perfect Raman domination number, we are more serious. Every vertex which is assigned value 0 should have only one non-zero neighbor which is assigned value 2. There should not be 2 neighbors of value 2. If there are 2 neighbors of value 2, a confusion may arise. A riot has broken at a point where there is no army unit, but the other 2 units are confused. One region may think that the other region will send the army unit, and the others may also think in the reverse fashion that these people will send the army unit. So it is not safe to have more than one choices in some cases. Okay, so there comes perfect Raman domination. Every vertex which is assigned 0 should have the neighborhood sum equal to 2 itself. It should not be greater than 2. exactly one vertex having value 2. Okay. Then comes perfect Italian domination. Perfect Italian domination, what will be that? Either exactly one vertex having value 2 or exactly two vertices having value 1. The neighborhood sum equal to 2. That is the concept of perfect Italian domination. Then comes co-Roman domination. Let us see what it is. Every non-zero vertex has a neighbor labeled 0. Okay. So if in a place an army unit is placed, there is one region which is secured only by this army unit. Okay. So every non-zero vertex has a neighbor labeled 0 such that exchanging one weight between vertex labeled 0 and the non-zero neighbor does not affect the protection. An army unit is kept in region A. Region B, it is 0. There are no army units. If the army unit from A moves to B, then again the protection must be maintained. That case gives me co-Roman domination number. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'll just move to Cartesian product of graphs. Why I need that? Just because any talk on domination number won't be complete without mentioning Wissing's conjecture. Wissing's conjecture is one of the oldest and interesting problems in domination theory. To state Wissing's conjecture, I need the definition of Cartesian product. That is why. Okay, so let us see what is the Cartesian product of two graphs G and H. Let G and H be two graphs with vertex set V1, V2 and edge set E1 and E2 respectively. The Cartesian product of G and H, which is denoted by G box H, is having vertex set ordered pairs V1, V2, where V1 is taken from the first vertex, from the vertex set of G, and V2 is taken from the vertex set of H. And two vertices are made adjacent if this condition is satisfied. That is, V1, V2 is made adjacent to V1 dash, V2 dash, if either V1 equal to V1 dash and V2 is adjacent to V2 dash, or V1 is adjacent to V1 dash and V2 is equal to V2 dash. Okay, let me show you one simple example. I'm taking K2 and K2. I'm taking G and H as K2 and K2. So this is my first graph. I label these vertices as 1 and 2. My second K2, to give a different label, I am labeling them as A and B. So what will be the Cartesian product? The vertices will be ordered pairs. First one taken from the first graph and second one taken from the second graph. So 1A is a vertex, 1B is another vertex. With one, only two choices, right? Then comes 2. 2A is a vertex, 2B is another vertex. So these are the four possible vertices in the Cartesian product. Now, consider 1A and 1B. 1 is equal to 1 and A is adjacent to B. Okay, so these two vertices are made adjacent. Consider 1A and 2B. 1 is not equal to 2, but 1 is adjacent to 2. Let us check the second vertex. A is not equal to B. Okay, so I can't draw adjacency from 1A to 2B. Let us check the third vertex. 1A and 2A. 1 is not equal to 2, but 1 is adjacent to 2. Then what? Second vertex are equal. A is equal to A. Okay, so V1 is adjacent to V2 and V1 is adjacent to V1 dash and V2 is equal to V2 dash. So I can draw an edge here. Similarly, 2 is equal to 2 and A is adjacent to B gives me this edge. 1 is adjacent to 2 and B is equal to B gives me this edge. Okay, so this is the Cartesian product of K2 with K2. You can check that these two vertices are also not adjacent. First coordinate and second coordinate, both are different. So there cannot be adjacency between them. This is the reason why the notation box. You take K2 box K2 Cartesian product K2, what you get is a box. That is why the notation box is used. Let me clear that one. Okay. Okay. So here you have an example of Cartesian product of K3 and K2. You can see that there are two copies of K3 here, and the number of vertices in K2 is 2. And there are 3 copies of K2 here. The number of vertices in the first graph is 3. In fact, Cartesian product can always be viewed like this. You take G box H, that is Cartesian product of G and H. There will be n of H, where n of H denotes the number of vertices of H. N of H copies of G, or G layers we call them, and n of G copies of H, which we call as H layers. So Cartesian product can always be viewed as n2 copies of G and n1 copies of H, where n2 and n1 are the number of vertices in H and G respectively. Here you have one more example. I've taken 2 arbitrary graphs and drawn the Cartesian product. This particular graph, you can see that there is 1 copy here, 1 more copy here, 3rd copy is here, and 4th copy is here. So there are 4 copies of the first graph drawn vertically. And now consider the graph H, which is drawn horizontally. Here you have 1 copy of H. This is the 2nd copy of H. This is the 3rd copy of H. This gives 4th copy of H, and this gives the 5th copy of H. So there are 5 copies of H. Just to show you what exactly is Cartesian product. So there are n2 layers of G and n1 layers of H in the Cartesian product, and that gives me the entire product structure. So this is V.G. Vysing, an Ukrainian mathematician born in 1937. Don't know his current status because he is under house arrest in Ukraine for the sake of doing mathematics, it seems. Okay, so I don't know what is his present status, maybe alive, maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, he is born in 1937, and this is his picture. It's very rare to get a picture of V.G. Vysing. I think only this picture is available. The conjecture statement is quite simple. It says that the domination number of Cartesian product of G and H is greater than or equal to the product of domination number of the original graphs. That is, gamma of G box H is greater than or equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. The conjecture was posed by Vysing in 1968. It passed the Golden Jubilee. In 2018 was the Golden Jubilee year of Vysing's conjecture. Much work is going on Vysing's conjecture, but the conjecture has not yet been settled or disproved. Initially, work was going in the direction that the conjecture can be settled. Then some of them started believing that the conjecture may be false. So they started trying to find counterexamples, but are unsuccessful. Those who are in search of proof are unsuccessful, and those who are in search of counterexample are also equally unsuccessful. So it is an open problem. When there is something which we cannot crack as a whole, what we do? We take one out of that, and then try to cut it. It may break. If as a whole it is not breaking, take piece by piece and break each piece. That is an idea applied by research scholars, not only in graph theory, but in any branch of mathematics. So in general, it is difficult to settle Vysing's conjecture. So let us try to solve some particular cases. And it was proved that Vysing's conjecture holds for all graphs for which domination number is 1, which is quite trivial. Gamma of G box H is greater than or equal to gamma of H. The statement becomes if gamma of G is equal to 1, right? So there are H layers and two H layers are not connected in more than one vertex. So we need at least one dominating set of H to dominate the entire graph. So gamma of G box H is greater than or equal to gamma of H is trivially true. So for graphs whose domination number is 1, the conjecture is trivially settled. And there are many partial results. Graphs for which domination number 2, the conjecture is true. This is proved in 1979. And graphs for which the domination number is related to some other parameter, rho 2 of G is a graph parameter. If gamma of G is equal to rho 2 of G, then for that graphs, the Wissing's conjecture is settled. Trees form a subclass of graphs for which gamma of G is equal to rho 2 of G. So for trees, the conjecture is settled. If G is a tree, then you can be sure that gamma of G box H is greater than or equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. In the case of cycles, once trees are settled, people move on to unicyclic graphs, right? For unicyclic graphs, the conjecture is still open, but for cycles, the conjecture was settled in 1986 by Jacobson and Kinch. In 1995, Hartnell and Rall proved that the conjecture is true for graphs for which gamma of G is equal to rho 2 of G plus 1. So for graphs for which it is equal to rho 2 of G was settled in 79, and the graphs for which it is rho 2 of G plus 1 are settled in 1995. Clark and Swan, they started working on the conjecture in some other direction. The conjecture states that gamma of G box H is greater than or equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. They proved that it is greater than or equal to half into gamma of G into gamma of H. You need to show that it is greater than or equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. We are not sure about that, but it is at least half of that. That is what Clark and Swan proved. Now you can try to find a constant C greater than 1 by 2, which moves towards the settlement of conjecture, such that gamma of G box H is greater than or equal to C into gamma of G into gamma of H. Okay. So for graphs for which gamma of G equal to 1, it is trivial. For graphs for which domination number is 2 was settled in 79, and graphs for which domination number is 3 are settled in 2004 by Sun. This is a different author. This is Swan and this is Sun. They are different. Okay. So for greater than that, that is for gamma of G greater than or equal to 4, the conjecture is still open. You can try for that. And for caudal graphs, the conjecture was settled by Aharoni and Schwab in 2009. And many related work are still going on in the direction of settling or disproving Wissing's conjecture. Wissing's conjecture is for Cartesian product and domination number, right? What if we consider other domination parameters, or what if we consider other products? That was another interesting question towards which we will move. And the graphs which attains equality in Wissing's conjecture was also an interesting question. That is, graphs which satisfy gamma of G box H equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. There are infinitely many graphs which satisfies the equality, and two infinite classes were identified in 1985. Later, many other classes were also found to satisfy equality in Wissing's conjecture, but the characterization problem is open. That is, characterize all graphs G and H for which gamma of G box H is equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. That is an open question. And then this I already mentioned, find a relaxed bound. C equal to 1 by 2 was done by Clark and Swan. Can you improve the value of C? Can you find a C which is greater than 1 by 2? Equal to 1 means you are settling the conjecture. Greater than 1 means you are disproving the conjecture. Okay, so try to find a constant C which lies in the interval 1 by 2, 1. 1 can be closed. Okay. Now moving on to other graph products. There is another graph product called tensor product. The vertex set is again ordered pairs V1, V2, where V1 comes from G and V2 comes from H. And two vertices are made adjacent if and only if, say V1, V2 and V1 dash, V2 dash are made adjacent if and only if V1 is adjacent to V1 dash and V2 is adjacent to V2 dash. Only in that case, adjacency is permitted in tensor product and it is denoted by a cross symbol. Again, you take K2, tensor product K2, the answer will be a cross. That is the motivation of giving the notation cross to tensor product. So Ral and his team tried to prove Wising's type inequality for tensor product, but they got that it is not true. So they disproved a similar statement of the conjecture for tensor product. They also disproved not them, myself and my supervisor disproved the conjecture for strong product. In strong product is the vertex disjoint union of Cartesian product and tensor product. That is, all three types of adjacencies are permitted. V1, V2 is adjacent to V1 dash, V2 dash if either V1 equal to V2 and V1 dash is adjacent to V2 dash, or V1 adjacent to V1 dash and V2 equal to V2 dash, or V1 adjacent to V1 dash and V2 adjacent to V2 dash. That is the adjacencies in Cartesian product and in tensor product. Both are permitted. That gives the strong product. For strong product, we disproved that Wising's type inequality does not hold. In fact, we proved that the reverse inequality holds. That is, for strong products, it is denoted with the symbol, a circled cross. Gamma of G circled cross H is less than or equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. Wising's conjecture says greater than or equal to. So in the case of strong product and usual domination number, the reverse inequality holds. And what about other domination parameters? We have discussed many domination parameters, right? So one variation of domination number is upper domination number. Again, in 1996, Ral and his team proved that upper domination number satisfies Wising's type inequality. In fact, maybe it is the only parameter which satisfies, only variation of domination number which satisfies Wising's type inequality. In the same paper, they have disproved that for independent domination number, total domination number, and paired domination number, a Wising's type relation does not hold. For all these parameters, they have disproved, and for upper domination number, they have proved that the conjecture holds. Again, myself and my supervisor, Professor Vijay Kumar, disproved the conjecture for global domination number, co-graphic domination number, and global co-graphic domination number. In fact, we were in look for another domination parameter which satisfies Wising's conjecture. We tried many parameters, but we couldn't find a domination parameter which satisfies Wising's type inequality, except the upper domination number, which was proved by Ral. So we have also disproved that many domination parameters do not satisfy Wising's type inequality. Now, for Raman domination we have discussed in detail, right? For Raman domination, Wising's type inequality is neither proved nor disproved. Maybe it is true, or maybe there exists a counterexample. We don't know what is the case. But the value of C is obtained in both the cases. That is, gamma of G Cartesian product H is greater than or equal to C into gamma R of G into gamma R of H. The value of C is determined. Obviously, C can be improved. And it has also been proved that gamma R of, that is a Raman domination number of Cartesian product of G and H, is greater than or equal to the domination number of gamma of G and gamma of H. But the domination number of Cartesian product, that is gamma of G and H, lies in between. It is less than Raman domination number, and Wising says that it is greater than gamma of G into gamma of H, which is still open. What we have is gamma R of G box H is greater than or equal to gamma of G into gamma of H. But regarding gamma R of G into gamma R of H, the problem is still open. So here are some questions which are related to Wising's conjecture. Identify special classes of graphs which satisfies Wising's conjecture. Many different classes are proved to satisfy Wising's conjecture. Maybe in that direction we can settle the entire problem. Not sure, many are trying. If you find one more class which satisfies Wissen's conjecture other than those which exist in the literature, definitely you can publish a paper. That is an interesting problem. And improve the value of C. This I have already mentioned in detail. And identify other domination parameters which satisfies Wissing type inequality. As of date, upper domination number is the only parameter which satisfies Wissing's type of inequality. So find at least one domination parameter. There are thousands of domination parameters. At least find one domination parameter which satisfies Wissing's type inequality. As I had already mentioned, so many domination parameters are introduced without having any motivation or application. I told you that if there is an application, well and good, that is perfect. There is a definite application. That is why I introduced this concept. In some cases, maybe we are not able to find any applications. We just define the tool. Someone else may be using that for some purpose. We are defining a new tool. That is also permissible, but should have a definite motivation. That is what I mentioned, right? This can be one of the motivations. You can define a new domination parameter. The property P is chosen in such a way that this particular domination parameter satisfies Wissing's type inequality. That can be your motivation. That justifies your definition. Because we are in search of a domination parameter which satisfies Wissing's type inequality. So such researches are also welcome. Maybe if you are able to find a domination parameter which satisfies a Wissing's type inequality, the proof of that may give an idea for those who are working in Wissing's conjecture to settle the entire problem. Another interesting fact about Wissing's conjecture is that there is a paper published in, say, in if I'm right, in 2009, I'm not sure, which gives you a problem. If you settle that problem, you have settled Wissing's conjecture. In the same paper, there is another problem. Problem 1 says, if you can settle problem 1, you have proved Wissing's conjecture. Problem 2 says, if you can settle problem 2, you have disproved Wissing's conjecture. That kind of confusion is there in the minds of those who are working in domination theory in the case of Wissing's conjecture. At one point, they think that the conjecture is true, but at some other instance, they start believing that the conjecture is false. So they start thinking the conjecture is false, but after some point, they again turn back and think that, oh, the conjecture may be true. So it is that much challenging a problem. Do not take it as a topic for your PhD. You may not ever get the PhD in your lifespan. So do not take it as a topic for your research in the case of doctoral degrees, but always keep that in mind, and you can try to partially settle the problem. You may not be able to settle the entire problem, but try to settle for partial cases. That's okay. That can be considered as your problem for research. But don't think that only after settling Wissing's conjecture, I will submit my thesis. You may pass away without settling it. Okay. So that is an advice. That advice was given by my guide to me. I just wanted to settle Wissing's conjecture as part of my PhD work. He said that do not waste your life. And that was a good advice. Now I am a doctor and I am able to produce doctors also. If I kept on trying Wissing's conjecture, which I am even doing now, I may not be having a doctoral degree. I completed my PhD in 2009, 11 years ago. Still, I am trying Wissing's conjecture. That is why I advise you, do not try to settle the conjecture as part of your PhD thesis. Of course, you can try for partial results. But if someone comes up with a settlement, that's most welcome also. Okay. With that, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? If there is any question, you can put in your chat box.
there is a question, ma'am. Can you please explain how that green dots became dominating set for Peterson graph? So let me take that slide. I'm not sure whether I made any mistake. Let me check that. I think I have stopped sharing. I'll share it again. Oh, host has disabled participants screen sharing. Only if you enable that or add me as a co-host, then only I can share my screen. So please do that.
Yeah, I'll do.
Can I share it now? No, not yet. Okay.
Just a second. I'm waiting for that.
No problem, sir. I just rechecked. Those green vertices are not dominating. What you have pointed out is right. The vertex on the top, the red vertex on the top was not dominated by any of the green vertices. So that was a mistake from my part that those green vertices are not dominating.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so that question was from Jay Lakshmi. Thank you, Jay Lakshmi, for pointing out that.
Hi all. As expected, the session Domination in Graphs and its Application by Dr. Abarna Lakshmanan has been really inspiring and has opened new channels on our ways of thinking about graph theory. We thank Dr. Abarna Lakshmanan for having taken time out of her schedule to be with us today. So thank you, ma'am, and thank you all. Let me remind you, tomorrow's session will start at 10 a.m. Please, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
So I also thank Rajagiri for giving me an opportunity to talk about domination to this esteemed audience. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
എനിക്ക് ഓപ്പൺ ആവണില്ല ഹോസ്റ്റ് അലോ ചെയ്യണം മിസ് ഹോസ്റ്റ്
Ma'am, recorded video I will share recorded video.